So I want to start with a story. But first, just to say that this week's Joy of Gratitude has been sponsored anonymously in the merit of anybody who needs healing. So this is a well-known story. You may have heard about it. There was once a family, and they were blessed with a child. They were blessed with a son. And this child appeared to be quite intelligent, and he was doing well. But as he grew older, there was one thing that was missing. There was one thing that he just wasn't doing. He just wasn't speaking. And they thought maybe he's a late developer, just wasn't speaking. They started taking for all sorts of therapy, speech therapy, psychotherapy. And this carried on for years and years, and the child did not say a word. And one day, the child was already 9 years old. He still hadn't said a word. And on that day, the mother brought to the table at mealtime some food that was a little bit burnt. And the child says, "This food is burnt." Everyone turns around. They're so excited. The child finally spoke. They're jumping up and down. They're excited. And then eventually, when they've all calmed down, they say to him, "Clearly you know how to speak. So why didn't you say anything before?" And he replied, "Everything was perfect until now." So what does this story teach us? This story, it's a well-known story, teaches us that it's not just good enough to be grateful. You have to communicate it too. Last week we spoke about making lists of things that you're grateful to your spouse about, or lists that you're grateful to the people in your life about. Someone contacted me after last week's Joy of Gratitude, and he told me a personal story about himself. He has a benign tumor in the brain, and this benign tumor causes hydrocephalus, which is essentially water on the brain. Liquid starts collecting inside the skull, and if it's not drained away, it can start causing harm to the brain and therefore damage to other parts of the body. So he had to go through a series of operations, a series of procedures to fit something that would drain away some of this buildup of liquid. Before one of these major operations, he wrote a list of all the things that he has to be grateful to his wife for. He wrote it up in a little book, and he gave it to her as a present. This was 10 years ago. She still carries it around in her handbag with her wherever she goes, and she says it is one of the nicest gifts she's ever been given. So communicating the way we feel, it's not just good enough to have that gratitude inside of us. Communicating the way we feel is essential. I want to tell you a personal story. Something that happened to me some years ago, about 10 years ago. My Rabbi Yitzchak Berkovitz, told us once that it's extremely important to tell your children that you love them at a time that's not connected to something that they've just done. If you only tell them that you love them when they've just listened to you, or when they've just done well in tests or exams in school or something like that, then they will think that your love for them is connected to them listening to you, or is connected to their achievements. So therefore you need to find a time where they haven't just listened to you, they haven't just done, what you've asked them to do, they haven't just achieved, and just tell them that you love them. So about 10 years ago, it was Lag BaOmer, and in Israel on Lag BaOmer, everybody lights a bonfire. It's dark, and the fire is it's quite a romantic experience. I thought, this is a perfect time. My son was about 4 or 5. We were sitting in front of our bonfire, just the two of us. I put my arm around him, and I turned to him, I put my arm around him, I said to him, did you know Abba loves you very much? So he looked up at me and with complete sincerity said, and I love Mummy very much. And I love Abba a little. So I don't know, maybe he got the message, maybe he didn't. But whether it's gratitude or whether it's love, we have to make sure that we communicate it. We can't assume that it's understood without us saying anything. You see, we're called, our name, we're called Jews, right? In Hebrew, we're Yehudim. And Yehudim are named after Yehuda. Yehuda, our forefather, one of the ancestors of one of the 12 tribes. And Yehuda was named Yehuda based on the word Odeh, which means I will thank. Our name literally means those who thank. That's who we are. You know, throughout history, we've been shouted at, Yid, Yido, whatever names it happens to be that we've been called. And were it not for the terror of possible anti-Semitic attacks, we should actually be embracing that. We should be proud of that. They're calling me a thanker. They are telling me, when somebody shouts Yido or Jid or whatever happens to be at me, they are essentially saying, you are an expert thanker. That's who we are. We are expert thankers. It's in our DNA. And as I've said before, the very first word that we say as we wake up in the morning is thank you. Rabbi David Kaplan, he's written a series of books, all based on the word impact, a series of impactful short stories. He says there, he writes there that a convert to Judaism came to study in one of the institutions where he teaches. This person grew up in a small town in Italy. He'd never met a Jew. He didn't know anything about Jews. But one day he came across a siddur, presumably translated into Italian. He opened it up and he found on the first page the Moda Ani prayer. And he was completely blown away. And he said he burst out crying. He couldn't believe that every day Jews wake up and the first thing they do is thank God. Sometimes we need to hear it from the outside to realize how special that is. This is who we are. We are expert thankers. It's in our DNA. And expert thankers don't just keep their gratitude inside, they communicate it. So here's the challenge for the week. The challenge for the week is take one thing each day, one thing that you're grateful for, or perhaps one person that you love and haven't told that to them in a while, and go and actually tell the person how you feel. Go out there and communicate your thanks. Thank you everybody for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week.